Hi, and welcome to AI in C Sharp, where we go into the Microsoft Agent Framework, and more specifically in this video, looking at workflows. This is my first video in the workflows, so I will give you a short introduction, and then we're going to go in and see a sample of an agent-assisted workflow, where we will be making some pizzas. But let's learn a bit about the concepts. And they have two main concepts in all of this, and that is executors and edges. So a workflow are simply just pieces of code that you want to run string together in a flow. So the flow could be just from one box to another. It could be one box, but if something go out, you can fan out and then aggregate, fan in. And there's multiple different concepts in such workflows. If you know workflows in general, you know that there's a lot of different cases and stuff you can do. But what we are going to do is we are going to build the executors, and we're going to define the edges on how these executors should talk to each other. And in order to better understand it, I made a small sample, which we'll go to. And the smaller workflows are in general, the more contrived they are. But I've tried to make something that could be sort of realistic. And for that reason, it's also a little bigger to see in code. But it's more realistic compared to just having a workflow that went from one box to another and then ended. So the idea is that we have a user that are hungry, and they, via a chatbot or some kind of input field, just ask for a pizza. And then we will put that order into a workflow. And the first thing we will do is we will have an order parser that will turn out what have the customer actually asked for, and turn that into something that are more structured. Then we will pass that structure that the AI will build here into a stock checker, which right now don't have any AI, but it could have. But it could also have tool calling to a real inventory management system and what we have. But essentially, it's just a hard-coded thing that some stocks can be missing, and if it's missing, it should go and make a warning where we use an AI to generate some kind of message back to the user, and if they want to have some replacement of some of the stock. And if all stock is there, we of course have some success, and we can make the pizza. So this would be a fairly simple workflow, but it will also be an AI-assisted workflow in that these two executors have some AI injected. But beyond that, we could have made this with any other workflow, NuGet package, if we wanted to, but given that it is here, we will of course use them together. So let's go into code and see all this in action. And we'll just simply take it line by line here, and then we will see it up and running. So first up, we have our configuration, just our setup of our agents, and we have made a small agent factory here just to fill it out here, because we need two agents. One that is a order taker, and in this case we're using structured output to get a pizza order, and the pizza order is just something that have a size, what toppings they want, and at some point what kind of warnings are there to this order. So the agent here is just take whatever the customer asks for and turn it into a pizza order. And that's the only thing it can do. The other one is if there's any problems with the pizza, it should explain to the customer or to the user that their pizza order can't be met, so we don't give a stock answer, but a real answer from an agent. So nothing new here. We have done this all the other places we have gone through this code. I've just put it out into a separate class so it doesn't fill up and we don't get the full meaning of this. Next up, we have 4 executors because as we saw in our thing here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so we need 4 of these. Could some of them have been together? Of course they could. Could everything have just been in one class with if statements? Yes, it could. But the idea is, of course, that you can make these executors. You can perhaps even make executors that can be reused across multiple workflows. And in general, just that you don't need to string all this up. Beyond that, the workflows can be resumed and suspended and have human in the loop and be long running and all kinds of things, but that will be for another video. For this one, we're just gonna make a simple one. So let's go back to code and see our first executor. So our first executor is an order parser, and as we can see, it gets the order taker agent in. And if we look at an executor, the way they work is you make a class and you make it extend the reflection executor. They are all called reflection executor, so that's the only one at the moment. And it's of type this, and we give it a name. And then we need to tell what kind this executor, what should it do? Well, in our case, we wanted to handle a message, and that message would be that it has an input of string, meaning that the order from the user as a string, and the output should be the pizza order. And when we have this interface, we need to implement a handle async here. We could have this interface multiple times, so it could have been that it was in text, but it could also be an MP4 file with the voice of the user, and we could pass that and so on. So an executor can have multiple handles if need be, but in our case, we'll just keep one. And here we just do normal agent work. We are gonna use structured output to get a pizza order back. So we're essentially just taking the string and turning it into an object. We'll set a breakpoint here so we can see that in a little while. Next up, we have our stock checker. So our stock checker is fairly simple. It's just gonna take a pizza order in and return a pizza order out. And if we do that, we just get our order. We loop through all the different toppings that the previous step extracted from us, and then we have hard coded here right now that if it's mushrooms, one of the toppings, we simulate that that's out of stock. In real life, we will of course have had some code here, or maybe even an agent that could figure out if it said the word mushroom or mushrooms or some kind of shiitake mushroom or whatever. So an AI could help us find the right topping for just based on text. But in this case, we are just simulating that if it's mushrooms we are out of, we will add a warning to our pizza order, or else we'll just write out that we are able to add that topping onto the pizza and reduce the stock. So we will also set a breakpoint here when we get to that. Next, we have the two end results, either a success, which is fairly simple, we'll just say pizza okay, or an warning where we give an agent because we want to check the warning, get all the warning text out, and pass that into the agent that it needs to explain that what we are out of and what they can do. And here we will probably send an email or an SMS message or whatever our system would do. So these are the four we have, but now we need to explain the edges. This one here is of course starting the workflow, but 1, 2, 3 edges. And the first edge is just passing along. So we are simply going in and building a workflow builder. And what we are telling the workflow builder is that the first executor should be the order parser, which we saw here. So that would always be the start of this workflow. And then we are telling it, make an edge, meaning draw an arrow between these two boxes from the order parser to the stock checker. And there it is very important that we then see that this one had an output of a pizza order, while this had an input of a pizza order. If these don't fit, the workflow will not run. It will simply just stop at the first step. But again, a simple case here, we're just passing along. After one have finished at work, the second one will take over. And then once we have the output of our stock checker that enhance the order with warnings or not, we go in and add a switch edge, meaning we are gonna branch into two different things. And the way we branch is we build an add switch, and we do a switch builder, where we add a case that says if the warning is 0, then it's a success. If the warning is different from 0, then it's a warning. And that is actually everything to define our workflow. But you can imagine you could make a much more advanced workflow if you wanted to. And again, there is multiple steps here for various fan out, meaning take this one step and start these two steps, or fan in, take these 2, 3, 4 steps and aggregate them into one step, and so on. But more on that in future videos. But for now, we're just going to build our workflow, and now we have the option to run it. And in order to run it, we of course need some input. And in our case, we've just hard-coded here, make a big pepperoni pizza with mushrooms and onions. And then we are going to use this in-process execution, which will go in and stream our workflow, meaning we can on the fly see that something happens, because workflows could be several hours perhaps. So we can see live what is going on. We could also just have run it, and then we will first see the results at the very end of the workflow. But we're giving our in-process execution, our workflow, and our inputs, and we get a streaming run, which we can then watch here. And watch mean we can get the various workflow events. So there's various events you can get. So for example, this is every time an executor is done, but it could also be every time an executor starts, every time the workflow starts, and there can be groups inside workflows called super steps. But for now, we are just gonna check every time something ends. We will just write it out as completed, the executors by themselves take care of the rest. So now I think we should just set a breakpoint and walk through it while we see the output. So I am running the wrong one. Let me quickly do this. And let's see it in action then. So we're getting our configuration and we are building our executors. So they don't do anything at build time, they're just being marked up. And then we're going to make our edges and our switches, and we can also set some breakpoints in our switch so we can see that a little while. So now I'm gonna start the run, and as we saw, we set a breakpoint in the parse order. We set a breakpoint in the executor here, and we're gonna set one in success. Not that we're gonna read it because we are asking for mushrooms, and we're gonna set one here. So whenever I start this, it now begins. And the first thing that happens is we hit the order parser, and the input was a string that just was make a big pepperoni pizza with mushroom and onions. And we're gonna take that message and just use our agent in order to get our response back, which will be some JSON. In this case, a large pizza with toppings pepperoni, mushrooms, and onions, and no warnings, of course, because we don't have any. And that is what this deserialize will do, so we actually have a real object. And that is the one we are going to give back to the system. So pressing F5, we now ended up in the second step, the check, the stock checker, and we have our object, so we can work with that. And our first topping is pepperoni, which is just okay. So it'll write out that it's okay. The second topping is our mushrooms, which we will simulate is out of stock. And then we had the onions, which was also okay. And then we're just gonna return the message back because we manipulated it using the warnings here. And now we hit our switch with our case, and it will ask us, or it will check, hey, how many warnings are there? There's one. So we're not gonna hit this step. Is this one? Yeah. Okay. So now we are actually gonna hit our events if we press along, and we'll get our order, our message here with our warning of out of ingredients mushrooms. We're gonna make that into a string. So just out of ingredient mushrooms, and we will give that to the AI in order for it to make a nice response back. I'm sorry, but we can't fulfill the order, and so on. And we end up having the full workflow. We passed the order, it completed, we added pepperoni, we were out of stock with mushrooms, but we added onions. The stock checker completed, we couldn't fulfill the order, and we used an AI to write out our apology to the user. So that is actually everything there is to workflows. This is a workflow that are fairly small. I can imagine myself building lots of bigger and bigger stuff, and I can imagine myself building some generic executors that I can use across multiple workflows, like sending emails, checking values in various systems and so on, because they are just you can just put agents in them. So it's just a way of having a nice structure compared to trying a lot of if and else statements in there. I will of course make multiple other videos on fan in, fan out, and so on, but now you have the general idea on what a workflow is and how you build it up. So hopefully it was beneficial, and see you in the next one.